Alright guys, welcome back to your 23rd. Actually, let me write that down so I don't forget it on my little cheat sheet in front of me. 23. Welcome to the 23rd AJAX tutorial. And now that we got the create XML HTTP request object done, what we can do now is we can actually use that object however we want to. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take care of this process function. Now remember, this process function is the function that we called as soon as our web page loads. So let me go ahead and show you guys how I create it and how I think is, the best way to handle this. Function, of course, process. And let me go ahead and give myself a little more space to work with here. Alright, so remember that this function, like I said, gets called as soon as the web page loads. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to go ahead and make an if statement that says, okay, if XML HTTP. Now, why do I like to do this? What's the point? Well, what this does is it checks that if XML HTTP, if this object is not void, and a lot of people like to set up this function kind of in a weird way. Whenever they're building this function, they like to make a bunch of different parameters for this. They pretty much try so hard to make this not void, but the thing is that it's okay if you return void because we are checking it right here. If you return void, if their browser isn't compatible with it, then nothing runs. You don't get any error because if you're saying, okay, if you can't create that object, then this if statement, it isn't even going to run. So it's kind of like a built-in check. So now what we want to do is this code is only going to run if pretty much you can run AJAX on your computer. So now what do I want to do? Well, I like to put anything in here in a try catch statement. And you usually want to do this with the heart of your AJAX because remember, even though you may code everything correctly in here, everything may not go your way because there are always errors with communicating with servers, and this is generally a rule whenever you build a computer application that works with, networking, talking to a server. Even though the code might be right, you may have a bug in your server, or your communication may be down, maybe your internet's out. So that's why you put everything in a try catch statement. So try to communicate with a server, but if the server's messed up or anything, then just go ahead and catch your error E, because error handling is awesome. And if something goes wrong, maybe my internet shuts off, we'll just alert the error, and this is how you do that. E to string. What this basically means is whatever error you have, maybe it says, dude, your effing internet's down. Then it just go ahead and it converts it to a string, and it makes it, in an alert box, which is pretty much like a pop-up in JavaScript. So now that we handled any errors, let's just go ahead and see what we want to try. So the first thing we're going to do is this. XML HTTP, which is the object that communicates with the server, and we want to open. Now this is what a lot of people get confused about because they're thinking, okay, this opens a connection with a server. And this is probably a poorly named function because it confuses a lot of people, but this is what it actually does. The open function does not start a connection with a server. I'm going to repeat that. This function does not start a connection with the server. It only kind of configures your connection settings. So it kind of sets up, how you're going to send the data to the server, where you're going to send it, and some other, settings too. But basically, remember that whenever you call this function, it doesn't connect with the server. It pretty much sets up the connection that you're going to have. So let's go ahead and talk about that right now. The first parameter is basically, well, let me just go ahead and type all this. Get